There is a new low-price, high-quality leader in the crowded trail, game, and wildlife camera market with outstanding color depth, sensitivity, trigger speed, and features for a remarkably low price, the Clobo trail camera. Join me and my wildlife friends as we test out this new Clobo camera. Okay, today the fine folks at Clobo provided a trail camera to test out. For those of you who have not watched one of my equipment tests before, be it cameras or whatever kind of gear, they tend to be comprehensive and lengthy, and so it's not like your typical review where I'm trying to sell you something. You're going to go into a lot of detail, you're going to learn a lot of tips and secrets and hacks on these things. And of course today I'm filming out here in the Great Smoky Mountains outdoors, overlooking some 5,000 foot plus mountains, so you might hear some extraneous noise and some environmental factors, but that's the way I like to do it. It's kind of fun. And I've tested a number of trail cams recently, and there's really a lot of them on the market, and they've really increased in build quality and features and decreased in price. But Clobo, this new Clobo unit, kind of sets a new standard, in my opinion, for price. This is actually was provided to me, but it's on Amazon for just under 50 bucks. Build quality and features that equal significantly more expensive cameras, and of course build quality and features that in years past I've paid $150 out of my own pocket for Bushnell cameras, but nowadays the quality and the features have just improved. So we're going to take a look at this Clobo, and first thing it was kind of nice is it came with a little bonus gift of a free OTG USB multifunction card reader and writer. That was kind of a nice touch. I mean, I think they're only, they're pretty cheap on Amazon, like maybe $10 or so, but my first impression of it, I've been using this for about a week now and taken thousands of pictures and hundreds of videos and really given it a pretty good torture test. And I've done that all on one set of extra duty. Actually, they were CVS knockoffs of Energizer, but they were like beyond the normal Energizer. You want to use the best quality batteries that you can, obviously, for getting long life and high quality photos and videos from these cameras. My first impression of this camera is really an impressive build quality at I believe it was a $48.99 price point. I mean, I've been using the Cam Park here recently, and the build quality here is equal and exceeding the Cam Park. The first thing that strikes me is when you put it on a tree or something like that, it comes with a real robust mounting system for putting it on a tree, and I'll show you an example of that. And it also comes with a real nice heavy-duty strap with a metal spring-loaded attachment. I really like this particular kind a lot because they're real easy to attach, quick to tighten. And this being metal rather than plastic means it's less likely to break. I've actually had some of these break on me when you go to tighten them a little too tight. And of course they're exposed to the UV light of the sun, and that especially months at a time. And so this one, I'm really pretty impressed with the quality of the strap and the ease, of course, that you can run the strap through here. Some of the cameras, believe it or not, are a little bit difficult to run the camera through and adjust. And it has two areas for a cable. You can run a locking cable through here and around the tree, and this is how you open the camera. It has a place where you can put a locking cable through the back of the camera through here to keep people from opening it up. And so it has a number of options and really strong options for mounting it and securing it. It also has a tripod mount, which should be standard on all cameras now. I don't think you're going to find a camera that doesn't have that, because I actually use these quite a bit on a tripod for some of the setups. And then if you look at the rest of it, it's got a triple sensor, which a lot of the cameras don't have. You're starting to see a little bit more of that. Cam Park makes a triple sensor model that I've tested out, and this one is equal to that, but it has a little bit faster trigger speed. Look at the incredible motion detection and trigger speed on this clip. This is the first frame of the video clip. It captures the blue jay just as it enters the frame immediately before it lands. That's pretty impressive. And it's just a good looking camera, nice fit and finish. And there's a number of things on it that when you've been working on cameras as long as I have, you start to appreciate. And the first thing that I like is having the card right here, and it uses a standard SD card. And I can tell you right now that I much prefer the units with a standard size SD card. I mean, if you have a micro SD card, they all come with an adapter, and you can just put it in like that real easily, take it in and out. It's a lot harder when they're on the bottom of the camera. And also if you're working out in the cold and the wet and the rain and out in the middle of the woods, and you've got to get a little micro SD card in and out with your thumbnail, if that's your only option, many times they'll fly right out of the socket and onto the ground, and you got to find them. And for me, it's just so much easier to use a standard SD card as a port for USB and a cable, which is, you know, standard on all of them. I don't use this very often because I transfer them directly with an SD. The way I usually use these is I carry several extra SD cards, so if I go out in the field, I just pop out the SD card, and you can see how easy that is to take in and out. If that was a micro USB, you'd have to fiddle with it. Then I put in a new SD card and take that with me. And of course, nowadays, you know, the gold standard of the trail cameras is to all have an on-screen programming and on-screen review. And this is no different. And again, this is at a price point that's, you know, on the order of $20 less than some of the ones that are out there now that don't have as many nice features. I like the design of this where it's split like this, and it has just the bottom part. It has real easy to use controls, real easy to see controls. The other thing that I like, that I'm starting to like, is don't do what I just did there. I had it in the test position. I ejected the batteries, so you know that's just asking for trouble with your card. So when you eject the batteries, you want to make sure it's off. So there's a little tip. But I like this way of doing the batteries. It's pretty robust programming. That's one thing I've noticed. It's pretty hard to mess this up. There's a lot of things I like, just a lot of subtle things about the new Clobo camera. You know, first off, of course, the build quality and the price point, which is setting a new standard really for all the game cameras and trail cameras that I'm seeing on Amazon. I like this kind of a snap. I like the fact that it's divided up in half like this with a fixed camera above, because once you mount, I'll tell you why, because you put it into test mode and you want to see your field of view. You want to be able to see what it is you're going to be filming. Well, if you have so as you can see right here, you're seeing the camera that I'm filming with, and I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing exactly what I'm going to see as I adjust the camera and then shut it. If you do it on a camera like this one, which has and this is a Campark model, which I like a lot, but I think that the Clobo in all respects is equal or exceeding the Campark. When you put this on a tree and then you want to set it up, you're turning the camera away from your point. So, you know, what are you going to see? You have to actually take a picture in order to see where you're at. So I much prefer the way this thing works is you have it set in a tree. You're actually, you know, all you're doing is opening and shutting this cover door, and you're seeing, you know, exactly what you're going to see without a lot of, it's just a lot more accurate as far as, you know, getting it set up to get the exact field of view that you want to see. And so now we'll run through all the various features of the camera. It's got a real nice, you know, review screen and the status, which is pretty typical of everything. And you've got menu and your playback option, which is here, and that's so important now. I mean, all the cameras now have the ability to play back and have a live view to see what you have. This one just makes it easier. And you can see here I've got like 562 pictures on here just from today. And if you just follow the on-screen programming, it tells you how to get back to the menu. So let's, and again, you're seeing, you know, what the camera's seeing. Now, just to give you an idea of, like all of these now, it has the option to take a shot and change. Over here you can see your menu, change it from photos to videos. You know, change it to photos, and then you can take a shot. I just took a shot of the camera, but I'll take a shot of where I'm at so you can appreciate the nice view that we've got here. So let's go through the mode. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You use the menu button, in fact the OK button, to select the mode. You've got photo and video. I usually don't use the photo and video. I use primarily photo or video. And the thing you got to remember with all these, and I see people talking about battery life and things like that, is your battery life is always going to be significantly extended when you're in photo mode versus video mode, especially at night. I mean, let's be let's be realistic here. You're talking about 8 AA batteries, and if you set it up like I do, where you know there's going to be a lot of animal activity, you could be taking dozens and dozens of videos at night that are lit up by all 48 of the lights here, and that uses up a lot of power. So if you're going to be taking a lot of videos every day with this thing, I mean, you got to expect that your battery life will be less. That's just the nature of the beast. But if you're taking photos, I've had literally 10,000 photos taken on one set of batteries. So it kind of depends on what you're into. So then the PIR interval, and this is kind of interesting. They have a 2-second option, which I have used, and I really like it a lot, because that means if you got action going on and you don't want to miss anything, like some really nice little setup, a shot for animals, or that you're trying to catch behavior or something. If you really want to catch a continuation of action from one picture to the next or one video to the next, you can have the option of going down to 2 seconds, which is pretty impressive. And I don't know of any other cameras that I've used that have the 2-second option. Most of them start at 5 seconds. Now the only thing you got to remember is that when you do 2 seconds, that means that your duty cycle on your, especially at nighttime, your duty cycle on your R lights is going to be really intense in working the battery. So what you might end up having a case when you use that super short interval is that you're going to end up with shorter than normal videos. So it's a trade-off. I mean, anytime that you're getting rapid shots like that, especially at night, you got to trade something off. And then the PIR level, I have that set in middle. I was practicing with that last night, but normally I set that in the high mode. And the infrared lamps, they have a setting of hunting or security. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I would expect that for security possibly it means just a different sensitivity and range of detection and lighting. But I haven't, I tried the two of them out, and I didn't see a big difference between the two. But I will say that I had routinely triggered on myself a lot when I was testing this camera out, and I routinely triggered myself at a distance of about 40 to 50 feet in both modes with no problems. Capture number is kind of important if you're trying to get a lot of action. In other words, that means that when it takes a picture, it's going to take 3 pictures in a burst rather than one. If you're trying to catch freeze motion and catch unique behavior, I tend to have that at 3. Now that means, of course, you're going to have 3 times as many pictures, and it's not unusual to have 1,000 pictures in one night with this. But I tended to put it on 3 because my purpose is to try and freeze motion and catch unique behavior. Now the video length is another thing that's nice to have. And this one has a nice range from 10 seconds all the way up to 5 minutes. And there are times that, basically if you set it, say have it at 30 seconds, that means that 30 seconds it's going to stop at the end of 30 seconds. And then anywhere from 2 to 5 seconds later it's going to restart. Now, these things will get hot and really wear out your battery. So like I mentioned earlier, if you have the interval set at 2 seconds and you're running videos pretty often, you're going to wear down your batteries, and 2, you might actually heat the camera up enough to where it'll start shortening the videos. So your best shot, if you're really trying to get behavior shots and you kind of learn the behavior of the animals and what you're trying to get, you might want to go 5 minutes and then lower the interval between them, but what's likely going to happen though, if you pick a 5-minute video, even with the best batteries, even with brand new batteries, in the course of a night with dozens of videos, you're going to end up with shortening the videos. So it's kind of a compromise. You have to experiment with what you want, and and what you can reasonably expect given the equipment, and you know, just kind of learn which settings work the best for you. Now, most of the time I run at 1 minute and have the 5-second reset. Video size, I tend to run at 1080 all the time, just for general principles. Language, of course, you can set that, set the clock. It's real easy to set the clock on this camera. I'm kind of happy with that. It's just another thing that makes life easier when you want to set the clock. You can put a timestamp. I usually leave it on when I'm testing. A lot of times I'll take that off when I'm not testing. Now, photo size is range from 5 megapixel to 16 megapixel, and really that's another kind of trade-off in quality. I mean, none of these cameras have true 14 or 16 megapixel sensors. They're usually on the order of 5 to 10 megapixel sensors, and then they do some sort of averaging or digital enhancement to make them larger, which is fine, but really what you find is when you shrink those down in size, they become much clearer. So, you know, it's a trade-off. I mean, you can go with 16 megapixel right from the start, which is what I usually do, and then you know, that's a big picture, something like 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. You know, in that order. Whereas 5 and 8 megapixels, you can have a smaller but clearer picture. So I mean, there's no, you know, if you you know, at this quality level, I mean, remember, we're not talking about GoPros and high-end cameras. We're talking about trail cameras that retail for, in this case, under $50, and this is just as good as any of the other ones that are out there for 60 to 70 bucks. But you really have to have expectations that you're not going to display this picture that's true high resolution on a screen. You're going to want to reduce it, and it'll look fine. And you'll see some examples of that later. Software version, auto recording, I always leave that on. I found the audio quality to be quite nice with this camera, typical of the cameras like this now. Now, a timer setting can be useful if there's a certain time of each day that you want to catch the action, and that's kind of related to the next one, which is time lapse. And actually, time lapse is something that some cameras don't have. For example, this particular cam park here doesn't have time lapse, but another cam park that I have does have time lapse. You know, I think that people underestimate a lot of fun you can have with a time lapse. You can take pictures of the trees changing color, or any number of things, or you can a construction project on your house or something like that. There's just all sorts of neat things you can do with time lapses when you start thinking about it. Time lapse and the timer setting are related. Let's say, for example, at a certain time of each day, say maybe just during daylight hours, or a certain time of each night, where you know something is going to be going on, or you suspect something's going to be going on, or you want to document something, like, for example, like I said, like a construction project, or the changing leaves only in the daytime. So you set the time-lapse interval here. Let's say for example 30 minutes. So every 30 minutes the camera is going to take a picture, and then you go turn on your timer, and then you can set the time so that the time lapse will only operate during the time interval between the start and end time of your timer. So if you set, say, from, I don't know, let's say for example noon to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you set it here to 12 to 1600, then every day from 12 to 1600 it's going to take a picture every 30 minutes or something like that. But anyway, you can see that. I'll show you an example of just some cloud development picture time lapse that I took, and blooming rhododendron. I mean, there's all sorts of ways you can use a time lapse once you start putting your mind to it, and I think that you have to have nowadays a trail camera that has that feature, really, in my opinion, because it's just such a cool thing, and it has a lot of applications. You can give your camera a unique name and a security code, You can reset everything to default. That's all pretty typical. And then you're pretty much basic menu setting. And I will say that the manual is as good as most manuals. I mean, it's clear and understandable. You know, as a lot of them, it doesn't go into a lot of detail about a lot of the things that I talk about, like what exactly is the difference between, for example, security mode and hunting mode, or the PIR or something. But it has enough information in here, especially about mounting and things like that. And that reminds me, one thing that I didn't mention earlier was that this has a wide-angle lens, a 130-degree angle lens. What that gives you is the ability to use this camera in really close-up mode. But there's several ways that I use a game camera. In a lot of cases, I want to do birds and small mammals at extreme close-up. And this camera, one thing I was very happy with is it's a good compromise. It does really good close-ups, and really, because of the 3 sensors, really sensitive to triggering on small animals. For example, triggering on small birds as small as a chickadee, immediately entering into the frame. So it has a real high sensitivity, especially close up to small birds, and it has, because it's a wide angle lens, and it doesn't really have a noticeable fisheye impact on it either. Like on some of the action cameras I have, if you get in the above 100, around 150, 170 degrees, you start to get a noticeable distortion. But at 130 degrees, it's not a noticeable distortion of the picture. And again, we're splitting hairs here, because we got to remember we're talking about a camera that's selling with all these features for under $50, and we're talking about the kind of features you usually find in expensive action cameras. And the thing about the action cameras is, because I do a lot of filming with action cameras, Yi and makes a really good action camera that's as good as a GoPro, and then there's some GoPro clones that I use that are kind of disposable if they get destroyed or something. But see, the action camera is limited by the the life of its battery, and it doesn't do motion detection well at all, especially over the period of days or hours and hours. And so if you want long-term surveillance at a reasonable quality imagery and video, then this is the way to go. And the quality of the cameras is getting better and better, and it's particularly this one. You'll see good examples of close-ups. So just to finish up with the menu here, the playback, we're back to the main screen, and the playback is pretty simple. You just push OK, and then you move through the various imageries. And if you want to exit, you can actually zoom in and move it around. And then if you want to exit out of playback, you go here. I mean, it's all real simple. The buttons are well marked, real easy to use. All the switches are easy to use. The speaker right here is real clear. And then it tells you your battery life here. So I've taken you through all the features of the Clobo trail camera. I really like it a lot, especially when you consider it's under $50. I like just everything about it, really. I mean, just the fit and finish, the robustness of it. It has a 12-volt DC option here, and just all over, to me, it speaks of quality of construction for the price. For somebody that uses trail cams a lot, all the time, this is just a nice little feature to have it on the side and easy to get in and out. Also easy to swap out the batteries. That's kind of neat. I like that a lot. And here's, I'm just going to show you. I'm using CVS. Actually, they're basically Energizer knockoffs, but they're max alkaline, so they're a little bit more robust than your typical Energizer batteries. And that's really the kind of quality of battery you want to use on these cameras, especially if you're going to be like me. I know that I'm going to be taking hundreds, if not 1,000 pictures in a night, and dozens of videos. So I know people always have complaints about battery life, but you got to be realistic about what it is you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish with the batteries, because the nature of the battery, of course, is the discharge. And these cameras are just such an improvement over ones of a few years ago with 48 lights and all these features and stuff like that running on AA batteries. You're just going to run through batteries on certain scenarios and it's nothing unique to any one particular camera. It's pretty much set by the demands of the power of the lights and the mechanism, and how often, and your duty, and how often you're taking pictures and videos in the duty cycle. So again, I tend to talk a lot about these cameras. So if you're still with me, I'm really happy with the results, and I've tried it in a lot of different ways. So we'll take a look at those and have some fun there.